The astrology of this week, 1st February 2021 through 7 February 2021, is all about Venus. It's all about the planet of pleasure, love, desire, connection, and the transformations that Venus will undergo this week in terms of its sign change into Aquarius, its conjunction with Saturn. And this will define the first phase of Mercury's retrograde as we have to work our way through how our relationships are being impacted. All right, I'm glad you're here. Glad to see you. I'm happy that you made it. It's wonderful to kick off a new week of astrology here. We're here in February 2021. We're now a month into this new year and this new era. I hope you're adjusting well. I'm feeling a lot better and more adjusted to the Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aquarius energy. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. The Stormy Grace Kickstarter is going well. I think she's over halfway towards her goal of the amount she's trying to raise. There's been a lot of other teachers added to the roster, some wonderful teachers, household names in the astrology community. You probably know many of them. You can find it all on the Kickstarter at the link in the description. And just throw a little bit if you can. You help support the larger world of astrology and the larger world of astrology students. So we start the week here right on Monday with Mars and the Sun squaring off. Mars in Taurus and the Sun in Aquarius. And these are the two fire planets. The Sun for obvious reasons, right? You just go outside and it's hot, it burns you if you're in the sun too long. But Mars is the red planet. It can have a red hue sometimes when you see it, but it's classically associated with fire and with the color red. So these are the two fire planets, the fire energies making a square. Remember, a square aspect is one that can be a challenge, right? It's tension that drives action. So they're motivating aspects. They're aspects that induce us into action. These are aspects that are like Mars. The square is associated with Mars actually in terms of assigning aspects to the planets. So we have a burst of this fire tension energy. The thing about it is that both Mars and the Sun are in a sign of what we call their exile. They're both in detriment because they're opposite a sign they rule. And so they're both weakened here by their sign placement. And now they're going to square each other. This is a contentious aspect. This is kind of like, this is when like people are down on their luck and they start going after each other as a way to cope with the difficulties that they're going through. We could start the week with some tension. You know, this might be confusion. Remember, the Sun is the organ of mental perception, according to Vedia's Phalans. And so we might feel confused. There might be too much happening to where we can't get a grip on reality. There could be, again, discord, fighting with Mars trying to figure out why it can't quite move as well like it wants. And then now the Sun is there to really shine a focus on those limitations. Sometimes we sort of blame the messenger. If you're feeling confused, if you're feeling off and maybe a little frustrated, this is what's happening here on Monday. It happens about noon in Central Europe. When we're feeling bad, when things have gone wrong around us, when we're isolated and uncomfortable, and then there's tension. I like to think about it this way. What do we do? How do we cope? How do we get through a difficult period? This aspect here on Monday. And I think of this phrase, this saying, I can't remember exactly where it came from, but when things go bad around me, do I go bad with them? And then the inverse to that is when I'm going bad inside, do I take people around me down with me? We can retain a kind of inner light or an inner peace, that's the Sun here, even when things might be falling apart or frustrating. It's the classic thing. It's like losing your wallet or a flat tire on the highway. Sometimes those are the best moments because it's like, well, you can't control anything here, and you just laugh it off and then you plod through the next steps to get the situation taken care of. More important, I mean, there's often times when we feel frustrated, and how do we treat the people around us during that period? You know, and I think at our best, we're still giving the graciousness, the appreciation, the smiles, if we can, the polite phrases, thank you, yes ma'am, no ma'am. Just however you treat people well, retaining those features of your personality even when you're feeling not very well inside. Because if we start lashing out at people, it makes it worse for everybody. It can often trigger new crises that then delay our return to feeling well and feeling happy and feeling centered. Venus is the ruler here. Venus ruling Mars and Taurus, and Venus ruling the Egyptian term of the sun, as the sun and Mars square off, we've got Venus overseeing this in a way. Venus is not making an aspect to the Sun, but Venus is still trining Mars and giving that flood of support to Mars as Mars has to undergo its examination by the Sun. Where is the love in the heart? How can we bring that into the difficulty or the challenge? How can we make sure we're front-burnering the idea that we're all human beings, we all have a capacity for love, an ability to love. Sometimes that salve of love, it's that healing salve. What does it feel like to love? You know, I always like to think about the mother and the child. At its best, it's unconditional. You know, a mother's love goes so far, the protectress energy. And that's where I think the Venusian war association comes from, right? That's in Babylon. Venus is the war god. This is the mother fighting to defend her brood and defend her home against maybe incursion. This goddess kind of warrior energy that can come with Venus sometimes. I think that's part of what we have to do here is bring the love that's behind that war energy, the love that comes before our desire to fight. That's what I would like to center here. And, you know, Mars has to filter through Venus. The Sun filters through Venus. Where's love? What is love? What is it like to be loving? And trying to make sure we're not taking things out or lashing out in the heat of that moment, and instead centering why we would love someone, or just love's a practice and an action. It's like lifting weights. It's like, I'm going to do love. 1, 2 love. 3 love. It's an attitude. It's literally an energy that we produce and can send out. So you might want to focus on those loving mantras and loving prayer and trying to generate it and send it out to people around you as this Mars Sun square happens. This is the big day for Venus here because 3 hours later Venus traverses that border into Aquarius and joins the 4 planets already there, making it 5 planets in Aquarius. Venus will still be ruled by Saturn, but Venus now is in the air sign Aquarius, and it's a fixed air sign. In these last moments, as Venus spends its final hours in Capricorn, it oversees the Sun and Mars making this square here, this fiery square. So I think it's kind of a way to honor Venus in these last moments in Capricorn for the good that it's done for us, giving that overcoming trine to Mars, helping Mars. Our love and relationships have hopefully helped us cope with the sad state of not being able to act maybe how we've liked to. So now Venus enters Aquarius and it joins the party and mixes with those other 4 planets. Mars, I feel like here, loses a little bit of that support. Air signs are signs of thoughts and ideas. And with Saturn and Aquarius, it's fixed thought. It's the thought that can dominate and control and that has longevity and it kind of reins us in here. You might think about information flow being restricted or kind of modulated to force an idea. Venus joins the party here, meaning that how we relate to each other, which is Venus, right? It's that connective tissue in our relationships. It now becomes more about thinking and ideas. We make a lot of our relations through the mind. And especially in this 21st century Aquarian electronic utopia, dystopia, however you want to go, I mean, so much of it is about the mind and then using our mind into the keys and then projecting that through the digital ether into the homes of people all over the world. Even if you're not doing YouTube, I mean, you're doing it through email, you're doing it through Twitter or text message even. This digitized relational approach that is our reality now. Venus comes here. We have an extra dose of it. And Mercury's retrograde during this time, so there's a sense of looking backwards. And where are you now in terms of your relationships? It's a good time for a relationship inventory. Anytime I see Mercury associated with Venus during a retrograde, I think looking back about relationships is a useful project. Through writing, through the air, maybe you have like therapists that you're connecting with digitally. You know, maybe your love or your loves are in different cities and you can send them pictures. Remember, the moon's waning here. And so it's a settling and a turning down of energy. With Venus and Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, yeah, let's look at where we've come so far in 2021. How are we doing with our relationships? Are we connected? Are we using the air element to help connect as best as possible? Are we overweight with the air element? Are we relying too much on the digital communication? Do we need to get out into the world a little bit? Maybe as the astrology opens up later this year, we'll have a chance to prioritize maybe some safe face-to-face connection. But it's going to take a deliberate effort, I think, especially with this year, this heaviness with the Aquarian energy and the heaviness of the digitized reality we're in because of the nature of the policy choices that have been made. Part of the healing of the traumas that we're going through now is going to be prioritizing deliberately the Venus, the physical touch and the Venus and the connection and the hugging and all of that stuff when we're able to, when we feel safe doing that. Because remember, Venus doesn't lose its significations just because it's in an air sign. Its natural signification is the connective physical connection. of human bodies and the face-to-face connection with others. That's what Venus will always want to do. It's just that when it goes through these other signs, it has to then filter through other energies and process itself through these other energies. And so this might be a time, like I said, to just understand how much we need Venus, how important Venus is in our lives. Thinking about it in a Mercury retrograde, it can be time for planning or just stopping and recalibrating, but getting that priority of Venus later in the year. Remember, Venus hits Taurus, then Venus hits Libra this year, signs that it rules. Gonna be some very nice Venus energy. But then the other thing, I think about how important our thoughts are and our ideas are to relationship. Venus does signify the face and the facial expression. That's how we can see emotion and connect with people. But Venus also signifies, with Mercury here and with the air sign being ruled by Mercury, the stories we tell to connect, the words we exchange to connect. These classic phrases when we meet someone for the first time. Hey, how are you? What's going on? Tell me about yourself. I love that as a way to generate connection. What's going on with you? Tell me about yourself. And often the answer to that is about the past. Well, I did this. I come from this place. I speak this language. I went to this school. I spent this time during these years. That's how we communicate with others. We share our histories through words to make a relationship. So this is a real opportunity here as well, maybe getting closer to people. You know, this applies to relationships you've had your whole life. I mean, I've been talking to my dad during this period. I haven't been with him. I will ask him often, tell me about this year. Tell me about this time in your life. What do you remember about this? And it's amazing to hear about others. And I'm here in, a new city, Skopje, and I've been asking people, hey, what about this time in the past? And it's just a way to come together. One of the primary ways is we communicate, ask questions, and exchange histories. Saturn is longevity, right? Everybody has a Saturn, especially as we get older. Our Saturn is our history. You're here in this present moment because you've gone through challenge, trial, tribulation, you've made it and you're standing. Those are all the stories. Mercury retrograde, ruled by Saturn, longevity, but to connect, that's the Venus. Just this idea here, maybe as you go through your life, I like talking to people that I see in the community, like if I'm getting a coffee or at the grocery store, just to get to know the people. Hey, how are you? Where are you from? What's going on? Take this opportunity with Venus here to do that. I think you'll be surprised. This is the question. Tell me about yourself. And then just listen. We get the tension with Sun Mars. 3 hours later, Venus joins Aquarius. And that's Monday, maybe the biggest day of the week. All right, so now I want to talk about the transit of the week, my candidate for maybe the best energy of the week. And this is that Libra moon that comes about on Monday after the Sun and Mars square off. About an hour later, the moon comes into Libra. And so that's about 2 hours before Venus comes into Aquarius. But this Libra moon is a lovely time, right? It's, again, Venus focused. You might get tired of me talking about Venus in this video, but Venus rules Libra. For all of this Libra moon, which happens here half a day on Monday, all of Tuesday, and then the first half of Wednesday in Central Europe, for all of it, except for those first 2 hours, Venus is in the air sign Aquarius. So there's a trine between the moon being ruled by Venus in Venus's air sign domicile, trining Venus in the air sign Aquarius. So that flow of everything I just talked about in terms of connecting through words and through ideas and through communication, digital communication, maybe through the digital ether, it's hitting heavy here this first day or two of Venus in Aquarius because of it disposing of the moon in the air sign as well. We're doubling up. But this is the sweetest energy of the week. The moon makes a trine to everything. Mars doesn't see the moon, there's no aspect, but Mars is also ruled by Venus, so it really brings Venus into focus. Venus is co-present with 4 planets and then rules the other 2 planets that aren't in Aquarius. So it's a heavy, heavy dose of Venus here. It's why everything I just said, you can turn that into an auspicious potentiality with this protected moon. And remember, it's waning. So you might want to be more reflective and more integrative of past experience. That's why I was suggesting talking about the past with people. Travel is changing. It's going to change. I've already been reading these articles about people saying travel will be different. It'll be more localized. It'll be longer in terms of how we approach it. We're not going to go places and just bounce around. We'll stay in one place. And this is Venus too. I think this is how the air sign, the age of air, the age of Aquarius will impact the Venusian potentials. It will be with people longer. We'll be more deliberate as we have to jump through the hoops, the regulatory hoops to get places. This Libra moon comes on the heels of that perfection of the fire planets squaring off. This might be a time to just have harmony, seek harmony. Once that aspect starts separating, the moon and Libra here, might get to talk a little bit. Maybe there will be a time to reconcile or have agreements or have new established order. Venus in Aquarius and then the moon in Libra, the cardinal sign, establishing new order for the relationship. New boundaries, new rules of engagement. That's can be so important in relationships often. Okay, I didn't like when that was said. Can we try this next time? Can we agree that this is how we'll approach the conflict? This is all, I think, with the story of this week, this Tuesday and Wednesday energy can be very useful for reconciliation, negotiation or renegotiation, and then new accord. We're talking about communities of online activism. It became very important last week when we saw just how online communities, connection, that's Venus, Mercury is the online, and then the air signs are the internet. How those can be used for activism. And that might be some of the Mars here now being disposed of by Venus. So you might want to think about that. Who's your community out there? How are you uniting with them? What are you building with others online? I mean, these are the tools our world is built on now. Computers, social media. And we saw this week, they were doing trading. That's Mercury, that's air signs, with a community to go maybe support more people through the stock market. So that whole event was very much a Venus and an air sign. Maybe we'll see that continue early this week. But there's things like Kickstarter. I'm seeing a bunch of Kickstarters on my Twitter feed. Support them. I plan on supporting a few more. Or even words of support. If you see someone that maybe you're an acquaintance with saying, I'm celebrating something, you can just say, hey, thank you, great, congratulations. Send them a few emojis. That always feels really good. All right, so we're coming now to the last big aspect of the week, which is Venus and Saturn making their conjunction. So Venus moves pretty fast here. It enters Aquarius on Monday. And so by Saturday at 8 in the morning, Venus will already be in the 6th degree of Aquarius where it will meet Saturn. And this might be things like being shy. Remember, Saturn's cold. That's its nature, is a cool planet. So we might have a coolness to our relations at this time. And even being heady, right, air signs, and thinking about relationships, that's all cooling energy. It takes us out of our body often. We're in the head, we're cerebral. It's all about what are they thinking about me. That might be in play here with this conjunction. Saturn restricting Venus, shy, maybe loyal or committed as well. Saturn being longevity, you might feel even disconnected potentially from others. There might be a strictness with the attitude. Maybe there's ruts that you're in with the relationship where you're not getting needs met. It's more about doing things because they've been done that way. So if that feels maybe like it's coming to a head, yeah, this would fit the symbolism, would fit the astrological symbolism. You might not want to shake things up right now, but just seeing and feeling, all right, this feels cool, restrictive, these relationships very much could be part of it. And it's what I was saying earlier about how the digitized relationships can be cool, can be disassociating, really. We kind of leave our bodies and we come into the age of air. We're going to have to get back into our bodies at some point. But remember, this pile up, 11 February, this new moon, is a climax of the Aquarian energy that hasn't been here for decades. But right now it might just be kind of seeing and feeling the restriction. The world shut down now. I just saw Canada shut down more airlines. Germany shut down more airlines. The United States has new policies in to restrict and shut down. That impacts our ability to connect, and we're all collectively navigating that for this winter, late winter 2021. It's the climax of a lot of that restriction. Just acknowledging this stuff to me is a huge beginning. It's like, all right, yeah, it doesn't feel good. And it's sad, Saturn's grief. Maybe this is a time to grieve relationship changes you've had this year, including changes about the world. I'm still grieving. I've said this like in many videos. I'm still in shock about just how closed the world is. I mean, I still can't even get my head around it. Maybe the last 2 decades, the travel has been a huge part of many people's lives. People have met their spouses, made relationships in new countries, had businesses. That's all been completely upended. So there's grief here, I think. This Saturn-Venus conjunction is about some of that grief. Remember, Mercury's retrograde, it's looking back. And this is in the Saturn-ruled sign of Aquarius. So Saturn's winning, and this is a sad period. What I was saying earlier about talking to connect, with grief too, a lot of grief is just feeling. There's a visceral loosening of grief's hold on the body. But once that's done, I do think it can help the grief process to talk about what we've gone through, journal about it, tell someone, hey, I've been really sad. It's a way to integrate the experience of sadness so we don't feel so alone. And Saturn could be integrative. I mean, Saturn is the larger structure. So when we can sort of align with it, it does create longevity and integration. So that's it. That's the theme of this week. It's kind of a sadness, a grief-oriented week, but it's really a week of preparation for getting into this epic new moon that's coming on the 11th. Venus has now joined those 4 planets. The moon is now waning into that conjunction. So there'll be 6 planets in Aquarius. That will be covered in next week's video. But I will say to close this, as the moon, it will leave Libra. The moon's condition this week, actually, the moon leaves Libra. The moon does not have an easy time. The moon hits Scorpio, which is the sign of its fall, ruled by Mars and Taurus in exile, having to receive those overcoming squares from 5 planets. That's, I think, going to be a difficult time. The moon then with the South Node in Sagittarius. South Node is an energy that can be rough. And then the moon comes to Capricorn this week. We finish out the week with the Capricorn moon. Moon exiled, right opposite Cancer. So this beginning period, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the Tuesday is the time this week to really feel something auspicious and really feel into that strong energy. The rest of the week, it's really a week of a waning moon that's preparing for this climax that comes next week. So that's really what I want to leave you with, is just kind of hunker down. Saturn is the winter. Saturn is hunkering down into slow moving and kind of waiting energy. And particularly with the Mercury retrograde, it's a waiting time, waiting it out. Let's pull some cards. Let's pull some cards. Always got to get some cardomancy in. You always got to bring more of the left brain, they might say, or the yin energy into the kind of technical yang side. And that's what astrology can often be, you know, the astrology bros, they call them. And these are, you know, really teched out, really into kind of this hyper analytical thinking. It's useful. I mean, look, it's what the practice has been built on. You know, astrology and science were connected for so long, and they still are, as far as I'm concerned. But the yin side, you know, that yin side, where we have the intuitive response to the teched out version of our astrology, is really where things open up. And I love this practice for that, because I can't tech this out. I can just shuffle a few times. That's about as tech as you get. But then we have to see what comes, and it's just there's an emergence of a inspiration that comes upon seeing the card. So let's get the first card. Okay, first card, 4 clubs. So we're dealing with a 4 of clubs energy. This is a very auspicious card. I love the card. It is Venus in Aries. It's the last decan of Aries. You know, I don't know about how else. It's a Venus-Mars energy. That's all we've talked about in the videos. Venus, and then a lot of Venus-Mars, because Mars is ruled by Venus being in Taurus now in the transiting sky. Maybe we can think a little bit more about that now. Venus and Mars are the 2 planets of love, sex, and relationship. They're different expressions of that. Mars is way more passionate, way more aggressive, way more potentially destabilizing. Venus is a lot more soft, subtle, and there's a certain longevity and a lusciousness and a kind of visual component. Mars is all about let's get it done. But they're the 2 planets of relationship, and they come together like this. It's all about how we relate. When Mars is too heavy, right, we want to just connect maybe about our own pleasure that's short term and get it done. We're less concerned about stability with Mars. We're more concerned about acting on the needs of the moment, on the desires of the moment. And that when that gets out of balance, it's a problem, right? When Venus is out of balance, it's a similar energy, but sometimes we don't act, right? We just go to what feels good, and we stay in maybe something that feels good, like staying in bed in the morning under that blanket when you know you need to get up. That's the Venus. Oh, it's just, I can't move. I want more of this. Or even the sides of pleasure where there's an excess. So we're eating the foods that taste good, eating too much of them. That's the imbalance, where we don't act. The Mars can't function when the pleasure motive takes over. So it's about the balance here. As the winter is hitting, as the society is really moving into this new period, Mars really hasn't been allowed to move as well as it wants to. So I think it's speaking more about adjustment here. We're still in that adjustment phase. Mars leaves Taurus in early March. That is when I think right as the spring arrives. And it fits with the idea that this period of late winter is about a restrictive period of inaction. And I think with Venus, this card, the third decan of Aries, how can we kind of create a container to allow Venus to move around here a little bit? And then we've already all talked about it in this video, but in a time when action is maybe delayed, maybe it is time to just focus more on the relationship side and the review and everything I've already spoken about. So it's underscoring to me the importance of Venus this week as Venus changes signs. That question, remember, tell me about yourself. It's not very martial. And then being receptive to a response. That's kind of a passive Venusian way to use your action. It's like, all right, tell me, and then we sit, we listen. So I think that's what it's pointing to, the importance of that. It's your homework. Try that out this week. Try that out this week. Okay, let's get the second card. One, two. All right, second card coming right up. This is, okay. I was going to try to pronounce this in French, and I don't have this. La Batelu. La Batelu. This is the Magician. It's the Magician. And I see it here in the second position, the future position. You know, I think it's, what comes to mind immediately is waiting for Mercury to station direct as maybe a part of this movement forward. This way out of the restriction that's going to be this new moon, the climax of this late winter restrictive energy. Mercury stationing direct is a real beginning, the first kind of real step forward, and that's going to happen in mid-February. So Mercury will station direct in like mid to late February, before Mars gets into Gemini. And so I think, like I said, it's the beginning, opening salvo of this more free spring and summer of 2021. I think you should consider, what do you want to start getting into? Mars will be ruled by Mercury when Mars enters Gemini. The reason why I'm focused on Mercury, this is associated with Mercury in our correspondence systems, Golden Dawn correspondence systems. And it makes sense. A magician, Mercury is magic in the most ancient texts. Mercury is astrology, magic, making things, crafts. And this is what this card is. He's got some tools here, and he's making some crafts to maybe sell. Mercury's also trading, business. So I'm just delineating this as opening up our potential once we get Mars and Gemini and Mercury direct in mid to late February. In terms of this, so look for that as we're planning this week in the first phase of Mercury's retrogradation with Venus there, maybe looking back with our relationships. We can use it to maybe plan and start thinking about, hey, March, after the Aries ingress, April, May, Jupiter comes into Pisces. We have that opening season of summer coming in June. So there's a lot to really look forward to. This week, next week is the time to hunker down and plan. All right, that's the tarot reading. As always, you can book astrology readings with me, tarot readings, sjanderson144.com. Click here to schedule a reading right at top. You'll go to my scheduler. I look forward to reading for you, one of my favorite things to do. So have a great week, have a wonderful week. Use the heavy Venus, talking about how we relate, talking to connect. Thinking about the longevity. You got here, you made it. You have Saturn. Even a 1-year-old has Saturn. They've got 1 year of that experience of Saturn. They've survived that first year. So you made it. Have a wonderful week ahead.